Jean Piaget was born in Neuchâtel, Switzerland on August 9, 1896. His father was a historian and was dedicated to his work. This dedication rubbed off on the young Piaget. He gave up recreational activities and pursued academia. His attention was aimed primarily at the study of natural science. When Piaget was 11, his notes on a rare albino sparrow were published, but he was forced to keep his young age a secret for the sake of preserving his credibility. He did this for several publications, but this first article marked the beginning of Piaget's career in science. At Neuchâtel University, he finished natural science studies in 1916 and earned a doctoral degree for research on mollusks in 1918. Piaget's godfather introduced him to philosophy, the search for knowledge. Biology was merged with epistemology, the study of knowledge, both essential to his later learning theories. Work in two psychological laboratories in Zurich, Switzerland, introduced him to the psychoanalysis, the study of mental processes. In Paris at the Sorbonne, he studied abnormal psychology, logic, and epistemology. And in 1920, with Theodore Simon, in the Binet laboratory, he developed standardized reasoning tests, or universal tests. Piaget thought that these quantitative tests were too strict, and saw that children's incorrect answers better revealed their quality of thinking at different stages of development. This led to Piaget's career-making question, how do children learn? After 1921, Piaget was director of research, assistant director, and then co-director at the Jean-Jacques Rousseau Institute, later part of Geneva University, where he was the professor of history and scientific thought. He also taught at universities in Paris and Neuchâtel. He was chairman of the International Bureau of Education and was a Swiss delegate to the United Nations Economic and Scientific Committee. In 1955, he founded the Center for Genetic Epistemology in Geneva with funds from the Rockefeller Foundation. And in 1956, he founded and became director of the Institute for Educational Science in Geneva. Piaget found 4 stages of mental growth while studying children, mostly his own. A sensory motor stage, the pre-operational stage, the concrete operational stage, and the formal operational stage. He believed that children's understanding, through at least the first 3 stages, are very different from those of adults and are based on actively exploring their surroundings rather than on processing language and understanding it. During these stages, children learn naturally without punishment or reward. Piaget thought of nature and nurture as related and equally as important. He found children's ideas about nature not inherited or learned, but constructed from their mental structures and experiences. Mental growth takes place by integration, or learning higher ideas by absorbing lower-level ideas, and by substitution, or replacing earlier explanations of an occurrence or idea with a more reasonable explanation. Children learn in stages in an upward spiral of understanding, with the same problems attacked and solved more completely at each higher level. Piaget's ideas were translated and introduced to the U.S. around 1956. The goal of American education in the late 1950s was to teach children how to think. This called for Piaget's ideas. His defined stages of when children's concepts change and mature came from experiments with children. These ideas are currently favored over the later developed stimulus-response theory of behaviorist psychologists who have studied animal learning.
To create a Piagetian classroom, we need to utilize concrete prompts and visual aids as much as appropriately possible. Relay clear, concise directions to our students with our words, and by modeling appropriate behavior, we should also give children the opportunity to participate in hands-on activities to acquire real-world skills. It is important to have flexible expectations for your students' perspectives. After all, they are young learners, and they will frequently think of only themselves rather than others. We cannot expect students to see things from another's point of view. This can be understood when addressing behavior issues with young children. Most often, an adult will react to a situation by asking the child, "How would that make you feel?" The adult is prompting the child to think about another point of view rather than only their own. It will take some time and cognitive development before a child will be able to consider others' thoughts and feelings on their own. It is important to provide a wide range of experiences in order to build a foundation for concept learning and language skills. In preschool and kindergarten classrooms, we can see that lessons are focused on a developmental or cognitive skill. This could be a center for socializing, using basic tools, or a content skill area like learning letters or numbers. In the classroom, it is important to provide large blocks of free playtime and to provide real-world experiences, to encourage open-ended questions and provide time for students to participate in cooperative and active learning environments.
Jean Piaget, he was born on August 9, 1896, and died on September 16, 1980. Piaget and his wife had 3 children who were part of his research. Critics said his research was not accurate because he used his own children for research. He was considered a genetic epistemologist. An epistemologist is a branch of philosophy that is concerned with the origin, nature, extent, and limits of human knowledge. Piaget's stages are sensory-motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operations. In the sensory-motor stage, a child 0 to 2 years of age learns through their senses and reflexes, but are limited to the sensory perceptions and motor activities. In the pre-operational stage, a child 3 to 7 years of age can only focus on one variable at a time, but doesn't understand concrete logic, can't mentally manipulate information, and are unable to take the point of view of other people. In the concrete operational stage, a child 8 to 11 years of age can form ideas based on reasoning, but have difficulty understanding abstract or hypothetical concepts. In the formal operational stage, a child 12 to 15 years of age can think conceptually, hypothetically, logically, and use deductive reasoning. Some definitions that relate to Piaget are schema, assimilation, and accommodation. A schema example is a young girl may have a schema about an animal such as a cat. According to her schema, cats are furry and have 4 legs. When she first encounters a dog, she might initially believe that the animal is a cat. From his research, he concluded that children think differently than adults.
The principal goal of education in the schools should be creating men and women who are capable of doing new things, not simply repeating what other generations have done. Jean Piaget. Piaget's view on the teacher's role is to create an attractive environment to conduct learning. Piaget said his theories brought up more questions for the students, which made them reflect on the information they are learning. And what do we mean by reflecting? It means that each student has to understand exactly what they are learning in the classroom by putting their own opinions and knowledge into the lesson. As teachers, we also need to be able to reflect about each lesson we teach and ask ourselves certain questions. These questions could incorporate or include: did the lesson work? Did I incorporate different learning styles throughout the lesson? What changes should I make for the next time I teach the lesson or a different lesson? When assessing these students, the teacher needs to think about the different levels of thinking each of their students are on in their classroom. Once we as teachers realize where our students are at, and then we are able to develop teaching methods, different learning styles, and ideas into the classroom. Also, we must understand that not all learners are at the same stage of cognitive development at the same time, which means we need to make changes for each student based on their learning style. Teachers must create activities and lesson plans that allow their students to demonstrate their own learning styles and their achievements based on their abilities as an individual. Students need the opportunity to learn by discovering on their own, because learning through different activities and experiences by themselves are essential to not only them, but them as an individual in society. By assimilating and accommodating new information or experiences, we should introduce new concepts that should capture the learner's interest and curiosity. We need to challenge their current way of thinking and their current way of understanding the world around them. Student schemas are built on with time, and we need to point out to the learners how to connect the new ideas that they're learning to the old concepts that they have already acquired, and allow learners a better understanding of already acquired concepts. Memorization of information should be avoided if possible. You should begin with concrete objects for each lesson and gradually shift to explanations to become more abstract, and then allow the students to individually come up with their own solution to the problem or the concept. You should also try to incorporate social interaction into the classroom as a teacher, because this is very essential for the students. You should ask the students how they arrived at their solution. Get them talking. Try to avoid yes or no questions so that the students are actually reflecting. Allow students to see the world from their point of view. Let them explore. Make instruction relatively short. And also, you should provide hands-on activities. These are very important for a learner. You should also, as a teacher, provide assistance to students who need it, when they need it. This kind of goes with Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, understanding when the students need assistance and when they can do it individually. So as teachers, we need to be able to know when each student needs our assistance and when they can do it individually. Jean Piaget said that our real problem is, what is the goal of education? Are we forming children who are only capable of learning what is already known? Or should we try to develop creative and innovative minds, capable of discovery from the preschool age on and throughout our lives? This is why imaginative play is essential for children, not only physically, emotionally, but also educationally. Because in order for children to comprehend what they are reading, they must be able to imagine what the characters are doing, what they imagine the characters look like, what are they going to do next. And this is why we need the imaginative play in our classroom.
In the sensory motor stage, children rely on seeing, touching, sucking, feeling, and using their senses to learn things about themselves and the environment around them. The fundamental importance of this stage is the coordination between looking and reaching. Infants can realize that they can move or manipulate objects with their hand and develop a notion of place and sequence of events. This is also referred to as object permanence. The next stage is the pre-operational stage. This is most important because this is when children are developing their skills to have language interchanges with one another. Most common in this stage is the idea of egocentrism, where children can only think of things pertaining to themselves. It is often seen when two children try to have a conversation with each other, but only talk about themselves as it relates to the other person's ideas. Piaget believes that egocentrism of young children makes them think that everyone thinks the same way that they do, and the whole world shares their feelings and desires. Thirdly is the concrete operational stage of development. This stage is most commonly characterized by the loss of the egocentric thinking and the development of logic and reversibility in children. Reversibility is the understanding that actions and thoughts can be reversed. One example of this would be that children can now determine the differences in dogs. For example, one child might think a poodle, a lab, and a chihuahua are all dogs. But in the concrete operational stage, they would be able to determine the different types of a poodle, Labrador, and chihuahua. The final stage of Piaget's cognitive development is the formal operational stage. The formal and operational stage is characterized by the ability to formulate ideas and test them and to arrive at the answer to a problem. Children at this stage are able to think abstractly and understand structure of science and mathematical topics. Piaget believes that not all children will reach this stage in their development.
In today's society, there are numerous toys that already have features such as sounds, lights, and movement that the child could easily have imagined the toy doing or having, which takes away the creativity and innovation of imaginative play for the child. Despite the fact that these toys may be entertaining, the toy may not necessarily help with cognitive development.
Piaget's theories developed over years. Further explanations and experiments were performed, but these refinements did not alter his basic beliefs or theories. Piaget received honorary degrees from Oxford and Harvard universities. Towards the end of his life, he remained quiet, preferring to avoid the spotlight. This kind of lifestyle allowed him to further develop his theories. Piaget died on September 17, 1980, in Geneva, Switzerland, and was remembered by the New York Times as the man whose theories were as liberating and revolutionary as Sigmund Freud's earlier insights into the stages of human emotional life. Many have hailed him as one of the country's most creative scientific thinkers.